So, continuing with the refugee crisis, there are also events happening on the ground, especially in Eastern Europe, that the Allied powers, the Western Allied powers, have really no control over, and something that the Soviet Union generally ignores and its abilities to be in control of this region, and that is what to do with the Germans throughout this region. Historically, Germans had moved east. There's German villages, or the remains of German villages, throughout Eastern Europe, wherever you go. You can find small towns and villages built by Germans, Saxons, and others who had moved to Eastern Europe from the 13th century onwards. Many of these Germans benefited from Nazi occupation because the Nazis were specifically looking for the original Germans, pure Germans, and this mind of set of who these pure Germans are. So some of these people benefit directly by becoming part of the local administration under the Nazi occupation in these countries, in Hungary, in Poland, in Slovakia, etc. Some of these people benefited indirectly because they spoke German and such. They were given maybe access to more food, or weren't harassed, or were given small jobs by the occupying army. Some people resisted the Nazi occupation and helped with the underground in various countries, or generally tried to support their neighbors, or etc. So there's many different versions of who these people are, just like for the rest of those who were under Nazi occupation. There's witnesses, there's bystanders, there's perpetrators, there's victims. Well, when the war ends, collectively, really, most of the Eastern European nations, those who took new leadership of these new governments that are forming under the Allied Control Commission, and the ACC is this organization set up by the Allied powers in various nations as to monitor the formation of new governments and to seek out fascists and try to bring some kind of authority and organization. In Eastern Europe, this is going to be the Soviet Union, of course. And what happens under their watch is this local expulsion of all Germans. So, like the Jews were hunted in Eastern Europe for 6 years during the war, now it's going to be the Germans' turns. And some people are seeking revenge, and some people are just, again, they're German, they must be bad kind of feelings. And these people are all going to be pushed back to Germany, the homeland. Even though they might have been in Romania, their family might have been in Romania for the last 600 years, now they're going to be pushed back. And we think, well, what's this, a few thousand people? Well, when it begins, the expulsion of Germans back to Germany begins, it's 12 million people. 12 million people are basically on the run or being pushed off or whatever back to Germany. And some people see this as, local justice, and probably for some cases it was. But like everything else in the war, it's the lack of fairness is astounding. These people hadn't had a chance to have a fair hearing as to whether or not they participated or not. Being a German speaker was enough to have you shipping or taking your stuff and running. And what's left behind, again, and this is what happens as in genocide, but in this case we'd call this ethnic cleansing, because generally there are going to be some murdered, but generally most of these people aren't murdered. The majority are just going to be sent back to these areas that they have no stake in, and what's left behind are these German homes and German property and German positions in society, and it's a way of social mobility again. Get the Germans out, and look, now we have all this space, we have all this stuff. In what we consider today to be Western Poland was historically Germany for a very, very long time. It's the industrial heartland of old Germany. And so now Poland has, an area which is depopulated. I mean, most of the Germans are then pushed out. an area that was economically viable for so many reasons. A lot of factories and all that material and businesses are left behind. And Poland uses this as a stopgap measure of allowing their people to find new homes, and and look, there's new jobs, and it becomes like this Wild West thing. Let's go to Western Poland, this area of Silesia and such. So the expulsion of the Germans is another part of this refugee crisis, and it's something that the Allied powers in Western Europe have to deal, especially because they're going back to areas that now are under control by, Britain, France, and in the U.S. So it's a problem because you're having more people coming in. You have this crazy refugee crisis to begin with, and there's more people moving, and there's other people moving in Eastern Europe, again fleeing the Soviet Union for various reasons. It's fearful of this totalitarian government coming in. Maybe they knew something of it. Maybe they were once right-wing leaders. They were fascists, local fascists, and they know they're going to be probably killed. The Soviet Union is not much for justice. They're just going to accuse, and you'll be off to the gulag, or you're going to be murdered outright. And so it's basically a crazy scenario of people moving in and out all over the place. And one of the things I was talking about is that the Allied powers are looking for the German leadership, who was in charge of all these operations. Well, every SS man or any German Wehrmacht soldier is the first thing they're going to do is throw their clothes away and find civilian clothes and try to melt into the society again, try to hide in their families. And so this whole need for justice is going to be really hard to deal with, because people are going to get fake IDs, and they're going to be on the run. And the Catholic Church assists a lot of these people on the run for various reasons. And Franz Stangl, for example, the commandant of Treblinka, the worst death camp, is able to get false papers, and through a local bishop in Italy, makes his way to the Middle East, and eventually he goes to South America, and he's not going to be captured for 40-some years. So we have to, again, immerse ourselves in that time period. It is complete chaos, and no one is sure how it's going to be rebuilt. And a lot of nations are virtually bankrupt. They were under a Nazi occupation, or they were fighting the Nazis. Britain, for example, is so in such bad shape after the war, and for years after that the U.S. Families were sending care packages to people in Britain all the way up to the mid-1950s. And if you talk to members of that older generation, they talk about the anticipation that some jam would come from the U.S. or something, that they'd get this care package. And it's hard to think that Britain, which was this the most domineering nation at the turn of the 20th century, the largest navy, in control of 40% of the world's people, is wanting to get jam and aid from the U.S. and from U.S. families. So again, let's get ourselves kind of into this scenario of what this must be like. There are people who are psychologically damaged to a degree that we just can't understand. We have the rape victims. This happened not only in Berlin, in Budapest, in Yugoslavia, as the German army went through Poland, all these places. So you have tens of thousands of women, hundreds of thousands of women who had just been recently raped and trying to rebuild their lives. We have soldiers who had committed atrocities, who had witnessed atrocities. We have soldiers that have been fighting for years on end, and what kind of state of mind they're in. What everybody wants is quick solutions and food and shelter. So again, there's just going to be this feeling that just whoever's going to give what we need now is the leadership that we need to find. And eating is going to be the number one goal of the Allied powers, feeding an entire continent, really.